Welcome to the Digging Deeper podcast. I'm Stacey Martin, and I am joined by my friend Maria Brady. We are so glad you're here today. Today, we are going deeper into this trap of comparison, and even just kicking off some of the conversation this morning.
Yeah,
this is a topic that I think everyone deals with.
Absolutely.
I think we see it everywhere, and Jason did such a great job of kicking us off and telling us kind of what we miss out when we are stuck and then how we can fix it. But first, I'd love for you to introduce yourself to our listeners.
Yeah. Maria Brady. I have a sweet husband, Sam. He is a middle school teacher at Charlotte Christian. And we have a little boy, Bo Brady, who is a riot, entering terrible twos. So it's learning how to love a strong-willed child.
That's a whole nother podcast that we could be on together.
He gets it honestly. So I am a counselor here on staff. I specialize in couples work and working with women. And this is a topic I see on the daily basis with clients. But to be honest, like, no one's immune from this. So I've struggled with it on and off. There's some good times, some hard times with it. But really, just like Jason said, like, this started way back. So there's no one's immune from it. So yeah.
I think that's so interesting because when I was thinking about comparison, sometimes, especially with women, we feel like, well, gosh, if I could just get to the magic age of 50, then I'm probably over it. Like I can feel comfortable in my own skin. Or for men, gosh, when you get to a certain place in your career, but I'm not sure it really ever stops.
I don't think it ever stops. I think we learn how to manage it much better. So I think maybe the consequences of it or the ripple effects of it, like, we catch it sooner, or we learn how to combat it or draw us back to truth quicker. But I think it's just something that, and unfortunately, this generation struggles with it more just because of the nature of where we are with social media and TV and all that. But I think it's partly just sin, and we're going to struggle with that. Not partly, it is sin, so it's just what we're going to deal with. And
so how would you describe this trap of comparison? What does it look like?
Yeah, so I like to use a lot of images. So if you can think of like two islands right next to each other. So if there's two islands, there's a water line, right? Well, you're island one, so you know what's below your water line. You know all the junk, you know all the good stuff. Well, when we compare, we just compare ourselves with the top of the other island. So you don't see everything below their water line.
Yeah.
And that can be a place where we always feel short. I think Jason said inferior. Like, we're always going to raise that piece of the island up because, man, like, we don't see their junk. Or we say, well, I'm doing way better than that little piece. And so then we put ourselves kind of in a superior, more narcissistic place.
Yeah. And I love that because when I thought about comparison, you always think it's feeling bad about yourself, but there is that part that, gosh, we're doing better than God, I'm doing much better than that person over there. So that's that superiority thing. You don't see those two sides of that coin very often, or you don't think about it.
You don't think about it as often, but I would say, and this is not like a generalized statement, but even those that put themselves above, there's something they're trying to soothe. Like, I feel better because I'm better in this way. So then I can, like, kind of flow with that feeling of feeling better and not have to look at other parts. But what I see most of is those that compare and always feel like they're falling short.
Yeah.
And it's comparison with others, and it's comparison with self, like that ideal self of, if I get there, then I'll be good.
Yeah.
Then I'll have my stuff together. So even if I'm 50, then I'll have money in the bank, my kids will be launched off and married and great, like, everything will be fine. Maybe, but it might not be. And comparison with self is really like, if you've watched American football, there's that little yellow line for the 10-yard line.
Yeah.
So imagine it being, okay, we've gotten to the 10-yard line, we celebrate, right? Awesome. But what does it do?
It starts over.
It moves 10 more yards.
Gosh.
But we don't have an end zone. Like, if we're always trying to reach our ideal self and compare ourselves, we're always trying to reach for an end zone that doesn't exist.
That is such a good image. Years ago, my husband and I were talking when he was approaching his 40th birthday.
Yep.
He's 44 now. he's turning 44. Honey, if you're listening, I apologize. I do know that you're somewhere in that range. But when he was approaching 40, I remember him saying, when my dad was 40, he was at this level of financial and professional success. And that pressure, and, in my mind for him, I thought, well, a couple more years, you'll get there. But you're right, there is no end zone. It is a moving 10-yard line, a moving first down.
Yeah.
Wow, that is
and
good.
it's like combining both is really where I think the deepest struggle is, because we do have all these people around us all the time. So it's easy. Like we see success. We see a great body after 2 kids. Like we see all this stuff.
Are you looking at me and saying that?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, good. Yeah. No, that's me hiding something. That's me trying to soothe something deep inside.
But it's, because we see that and then we add, oh, well, they're like that, so let me add that to my ideal self.
Yeah.
So they combine, and it just makes it.
So is it obvious when you're trapped? Is it obvious to the person who's trapped, or is it subtle?
Both. So I think there are some things that are obvious, like when you're like, man, I want that bigger house, or I need my kid to behave this way, or I need to get to where my boss is. Like there are some things that are obvious because you think about them all the time, and you're like actively just pushing for them. I think where it's not obvious is in subtle ways. And I'll give a personal example. Because of the nature of my job, my husband's job, he gets home way earlier. He does a lot more of the cleaning and of the like nighttime routine for our son. And then I get home and I might get home at 8 and I'm immediately doing dishes or immediately doing something to help. And my husband said, stop comparing yourself to me. And I'm like, I did not realize I was actually doing that.
Yeah.
But I was. I'm like, hold on, I'm supposed to do all the things he's doing, right? The traditional roles or whatnot. But he's never put pressure on me to do any of that. So it's a combination of comparing with what he has access to do because he gets home at 4, combined with like this ideal image of what a working mom should be able to do, which, let's be honest, like it's impossible.
Yeah.
Right? So that's the ideal part that I didn't even realize I was striving for. And I think that's why we need people around us that we love and we trust, that
To call you out on that.
Yeah, that have earned the right to say something hard in gentleness and kindness to us.
Oh, that's so good.
Yeah.
I struggle. For me personally, it's people, I compare my time versus other people's time. So, and a lot of it is stay-at-home mom versus working mom. It's, gosh, well, it appears that she has all this time. I wish I had that kind of time. Why don't I have that kind of time to devote to my body, my house, my kids, and it's just this vicious cycle of comparison. Well, and so much of it is connected to social media, like you were saying before. And I think Instagram, as much as I love social media in a lot of ways, we only see people's highlight reel. I mean,
absolutely.
Jason did a great job of showing, kind of the edited Instagram.
That was a great example.
Because that is, I mean, it hit home for me this weekend because my family, we were at the lake. And so I'm taking all these beautiful sunset pictures of my children living their best life. But on the outside of that, was, I think my kids only ate Doritos for 2 days. They were both chafed from life jackets, and I just could not even deal. There was crying. I was feeling the pressure of, what if they're not on their best behavior? We're in somebody else's house. Like, I was tense, but instead it looks like the Martins have this great life. It actually looked like it was probably our lake house, which, by the way, it was not. It was not. But, you only see people's highlight reel. So what do we need to remember when we're looking at social media?
I mean, I think you call it out, and I think Jason does such a beautiful job of showing that. Like, that's the water line. Like, what you see is above. Like, you don't see that the mom's holding the little girl's feet up, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's below the water line. So it's a combination of things. Like, you have to put the reality of your life into perspective. Like, hold on. Do I put my mess on social media? No. 1, because I don't think about it, right? And 2, I don't want my mess to be seen. And that's a whole nother question, like, why not? So I have to know that just as much as I'm not putting my kid tantruming on social media for many reasons, there aren't either.
Yeah.
So put that picture in the perspective of life in general. Like, make sure you do that. And then if it feels like I'm like struggling, get off or have sabbaticals from it. And that means that you have your husband or a best friend change your password for a week. Because let's be honest, we can delete an app
And still.
And immediately put it back on, or go to Safari or whatever you use to log in. So you have to gauge that. How much of my emotional and mental space is this taking, and what ripple effects is it having?
That's good. What if you're somebody who feels almost compelled, I guess in an obsessive way, to only post your highlight reel?
Then I would ask you to think about why. Like, what does it feed in your heart when you put that out there? Because when we're putting something out there like that to the world, we get feedback, right? And that feedback feels good, right? If it's the beautiful kid or the awesome success at work, this award that you're getting, where are you not getting filled that's filling it?
Yeah.
Right? So where's the like is filling what that's missing in you? We all want to share our lives, and there's nothing wrong with that, but everything has a tipping point, right? Like, so social media I don't think is a devil. Like, I don't think it's horrible. I think it has a whole lot of good, but then the tipping point is, where is that getting filled? What part of me is getting filled by that? Maybe the Lord needs to fill it, or hold on, I need like a connection with a person, like a face-to-face connection, not a like connection. So it's really all about, like, you have to reflect on why do I need to do this? And that could be a lot of different answers, but that gets more to the root.
Sometimes I've wondered about these people who we call influencers, on social media, especially in Instagram. And for women, I had a friend a couple years ago, I was talking about, not knowing what's in style for clothes-wise. And gosh, and I don't have a lot of money to spend, and she said, follow these two women. They always have these great, outfits and different things. And I started following them. And instead of feeling good about myself, I felt bad because it was the eyelash extensions and the spray tan and the revolving clothes and and then I started thinking, what is it about them inside that makes them influencers? And not in the good way, but like, what is it that has gotten them addicted to this place of needing to fuel influence via social media? Yeah.
And some of that, it's really all about, like, what's your intention? And motivating drive. Like, it could genuinely be like, I love this feeds my heart, I enjoy fashion,
I'm helping people.
And there's nothing wrong with tanning, extensions, nothing. But if it's due to a void that you're filling, so the action's the same. The action is still like, I'm putting the same content out on social media, but it's really like, is my motivating drive because this is something that gives me joy and I feel called to this and it's really fun, or I have some of that, but it's really because I feel really lonely, or I don't feel validated, or I need approval, or I feel so empty, and this gives me a connection with someone. Same action,
different intention. Well, I just read a study about dopamine. And how for teenagers especially, that there's dopamine, which is like your feel-good hormone in your brain.
Pleasure hormone.
Released when you get a like on something. So every time there's a like on a post or a video or something, it releases dopamine, which creates, you get addicted to the dopamine release.
And that is completely true. And a lot of, I would say, and don't quote me on this because I know it's recent. I don't know if it's 3 or 5 or 7 years, but with the influx of social media and even gaming and all that online stuff that's happened, research has shown that it is an addiction, because just like when we drink alcohol or when we gamble or when we buy something or when we eat something, like that happy hormone, that pleasure hormone is released. So it's the same thing.
So when it dips, you've got to get it
more.
Yes.
So and I can't remember when this happened, but this was at least 5 or 6 years ago. I was with a group of young adults. I would say young professionals, maybe early 20s, in New York City, and what I heard was, I need to post this at this time in this way because that will give me the highest chance of the most likes.
Wow.
And it shocked me because I haven't thought about that. But
there's a strategy.
There's a strategy because it fills something. Now, is it their dopamine being released? Sure, there's part of it. There's probably more to that story. But yeah, I mean, I would totally see that. And I mean, it's the same hormone that's released when we bond with people in intimate ways, whether it's with a mom breastfeeding her child or during intimacy with a spouse.
Same hormone
that connects you. So that same hormone is released. It's connecting you to the like.
Well, it's so interesting because Jason even said, let me make sure I get it right here, that he said that the human mind is not meant to deal with the immense pressure of endlessly comparing yourself. And that seems, if God created our brains to release hormones like that in ways that connect us to other people in real intimate, authentic ways, mother, child, spouse, you know, in all the intimate ways, you can see that our brains really aren't meant to live under that kind of stress.
Yeah, but it's so cool because God did give us that hormone. Like, that's a really sweet thing He gave us to help us connect because we're wired for connection. Therefore, it makes so much sense that people are seeking connection in any way possible, right? And when we compare, like, there's an element of connection there. Like, I don't have that thing that they have, right? So I'm missing that component that could help me connect here. Right?
Yeah.
And that's an element of it. It might not be all of it, but I think our brains aren't capable because we're constantly striving, so we're missing out on the good that we have.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it's a good thing that we have this little hormone that gets released because it helps us so much in our families and our intimate relationships, but it can tip.
Well, that's what he said, that from Craig Rochelle, who's another pastor, he quoted him saying that the fastest way to kill something you love is to compare it to something else.
Absolutely.
And I think, you know, my poor husband, he gets so much airtime on this podcast, he doesn't even realize it. But, I think a couple years ago at about that 7-year mark, that 7-year itch, everyone's marriage looked better than ours.
Sure.
You know, everyone's husband was more affectionate, and it's never back on me. You know, I never turned the mirror around to say, poor Mike, what he was dealing on my end. But everyone's husband was more affectionate. Everyone's marriage, they seemed like best friends. And gosh, I felt like we were in a foxhole.
Yep.
And there is no faster way to kill our marriage than to compare it to somebody else's. I even think about the joy that I have in my current stage of life, even with working. There's no faster way to kill this joy of where I am professionally than to say, it looks like stay-at-home moms have it easier.
Oh, yeah.
I think they're experiencing more joy in their kids because they're able to devote, you know.
So it robs contentment, and then it makes you insecure.
Oh, yeah.
Like, something's wrong here because I don't have this, and what do I do? I need to do something more, and in this way, and in this way. So then you have anxiety on top of that, and then you have depression on top of that. So, and it just snowballs. And the reality is, like, you're getting a snippet of someone else's marriage.
Yeah.
Unless you're, like, best friends.
And they're letting you in.
Yeah, they're letting you in and you're letting them in. So you get the raw deal, which I think people need that. You need that individually. You need that as a couple. Just to have people speak into your blind spots and also to encourage you and to remind you, it's normal. Like, it is normal to have an argument.
Yeah.
You know, I tell couples, like, you're in couples counseling not to never have conflict. That's impossible until we're with Jesus. And I wish we could get there quicker sometimes. But it's really like, how do we manage struggle?
Yeah.
And comparison's the same thing. Like, how do we manage it? We will not be free of it 100% all the time until we're in heaven.
Yeah.
Which is infuriating in some ways, but also like, okay, then I don't have to fix this in 2 seconds. I don't have to have our marriage be from this place of discontentment to, like, you know, fireworks.
Miraculous,
in a week. Like,
it
doesn't work that way. And there's an element, and I think I see a lot of people wanting quick fixes or heal me real fast. One, I'm not Jesus. I don't have power to do that.
Yeah.
But there is something sweet about walking slowly because then you grow roots.
Oh, that's good.
And that's why, you know, if we continue to struggle with comparison, which we will to one degree, hold on, this is familiar. I know what to do with this.
Yeah.
Because I took my time to figure out, what are my triggers? What does it say to me? Is that a truth or a lie? Where do I go to receive encouragement? So if you go at the process and pace it needs to go at, then you grow roots and you're more equipped to manage it.
My dad and I were just talking about this too when I told him that this podcast was coming up. He's in his 60s and he has a love for the water.
Yep.
And we were talking about that when he was in his early 40s, he could not understand why he was not in a place professionally to have a lake house.
Yeah.
And it burdened him in so many ways, and it really it made him insecure about work. It made him insecure about his trajectory professionally. You know, now he's coming up on retirement age, and he's not really one to sit around. So I say retirement age, that could be 15, 20 years from now. But he was saying that for so much was like this boulder. You know, if you've ever read Dante's Inferno in English, there's all these 7 layers of hell. And one of them is somebody pushing a boulder up a hill for all of eternity. And I think comparison is like that. It is like pushing a boulder up a hill for all of eternity, because you'll always be discontent.
Yep. And it's really a matter of, is that boulder like a real thick actual rock?
Yeah.
Or have we progressed that we're realizing, hey, that looks like a boulder, but it's actually made of cardboard.
Yeah.
It's trying to tell me that I'm not enough, or that I got this. I don't know why they're having an issue.
Yeah.
Like it's telling you a lie. So if we believe it, then it is the heavy boulder that's like killing us, or we call it out for what it is. Like, all right, you're disguising as this massive thing, but I know what you are.
I think that's what's been so interesting about this series, is that the things that have trapped us really are lies from Satan.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yep.
And it's about identifying the truth in it.
And the more we breathe life into the lie, the bigger it is. It's the same. You know, I tell people I use a lot of images in counseling. It helps me a lot too. But anxiety is like a little red balloon. Like, it's small, right? I think Jonathan mentioned, like, we need a little kick in the pants to like get exams done or show up on time at work or whatnot. But the more air we blow into the balloon, right? If we blow it really big and we're blowing into it, like, we can't see the surrounding truth anymore. All we see is red. So it's like our anxiety is huge, our comparison is huge, but it's actually a flimsy little balloon. So we have to call it out for what it is, right? And there's good in striving, right? Comparison in the sense of making ourselves inferior or superior is not a good thing. But again, this is motivating drive. But am I looking to someone because I really admire them and I want to grow in those ways? Sure. So it has the flavor of comparison, but my motivating drive isn't, oh, I'm horrible or awesome. I don't struggle with that. It's, hey, I admire this characteristic. How do I build that in me? Like, Lord, help me build that. So it doesn't put me in a place above or below. It just makes me curious and desire more from the Lord in my life in this aspect.
So if the motivation is not in line with what you're saying, we see it in the 10 Commandments. One of them was thou shalt not. Isn't it funny that you can't do the 10 Commandments unless it's the King James Version? Thou shalt not, but thou shalt not covet. So if your motivation's not in alignment, then it is a sin. So do we need to ask for forgiveness for that? Like, how does that work? How does that forgiveness process?
I think... So I would say yes, in the sense of, like, when we compare, we create an idol.
Oh.
So, like, if I really wanted a bigger house, right? And I'm like comparing to my friends, and I'm creating this idea, and I'm like, it's sucking the life out of me and my time, and I'm constantly searching for homes, then I'm slowly building an idol in my life because I'm not satisfied with what God has given me.
Yep. I am nodding my head because I can think of quite a few places in my life currently that I need to say, God, I think I've made that an idol.
And that can be the next promotion up in a career. It can be a size 2.
Yep.
Because what we do is when we replace that thing with God, like, God gets a little, sidekick over here, and then I'm more focused on this, and it starts consuming my time. Yeah. So I'm not turning to the Lord to say, hey, where would you want us to live? Is this our place? Like, great. If it is, we'll make it work.
How would you have me care for my body?
Exactly.
As opposed to, I'm going to beat myself into a size 2.
Yes. Yeah. Or I will not see my family all day long because I'm going to work 6 a.m. to midnight every day because I need to become a partner at work or whatever the next step is. Yeah.
Wow. So it's really asking more forgiveness that we have replaced God on his throne with something else.
Yes.
Not so much the actual motivation of comparison, but the idol.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, there are 3 things that Jason said are symptoms of being trapped. And I think this was really good because I think for people who for some of us, we realize, like, I am trapped because I feel obsessive about getting to the next place.
Right.
But there were some that I think when I heard this, I thought, gosh, I bet there's some areas where I compare and I'm trapped by it and I don't even realize. And the three symptoms were that we miss out on contentment, that we miss out on genuine relationships, and God's unique story for us.
Yes.
What would you say to a client that you can tell is struggling with contentment? Maybe they've not self-identified, but you're hearing and you're like, oh, you are not content.
Well, I would ask them where their joy comes from. And that typically can highlight what they're maybe putting above the Lord or that ideal image of themselves or their life. But I also always talk about, like, you are unique. Like, your story and who you are is unique because you are made in the image of God. And let's talk about that. It's a relational image, right? So we need people. So you need some people on your team to walk with you through this struggle of contentment or whatever it is. But also, like, there's no one on this planet like you from the beginning to the end of time. Like, that's a huge deal. Like, in all of eternity, you're the only person that reflects God in the way that you reflect him. And that's amazing. And your story is so unique in how God writes it. So where are the places where we've ignored him in your story or where we've missed out something that he's doing? So I try to, now if faith is something that they really want to talk about, then this is where I'll go. Or I'll say, okay, what are you striving for in this? Like, what doesn't feel enough? And sometimes that not enough feeling can be connected to the Lord. Like, I don't really know who I am in him, or could be connected to family of origin issues that I was told this all my life, or
again,
directly
lies.
Or indirectly, right?
Yeah, lies.
And because of that, then I created this way of protecting myself, and then that snowballed into a lack of contentment because I really want this, but I'm never striving for it because either I feel ill-equipped to, or not enough to try, or not worthy to try. So there's so many facets. So I feel like I'm answering in all kinds of ways because it's just really complicated. But I think it's very common. I just think, I see it every single day.
Wow.
It just has a different face
For
and
different
a different
people.
look. Yeah.
Yeah, based on their motivations and their background.
Yeah.
Well, what about for the person who, and you talked a little bit about God's unique story. Why is it? Because it seems like we're in a culture that we all want to be so very individualistic, right?
Yeah.
But yet we're willing to have a rerun of somebody else's story for our lives. Why is that?
That's a good, I think I'm understanding what you're saying. I think, well, one, we're created to be relational, but relationships are hard. They're hard. There's a lot of joy in them, and but they're messy. They take work. And if we see someone's highlight reel, or if we only have connection there, then it doesn't require as much of us, right? Like, if I connect and feel good through the like, I don't really have to have a relationship with you. Like, I can get the feeling of feeling good through, oh, you affirmed this picture I posted, or
So I don't need to have the real messy relationship.
right. And I
Wow.
think comparison also separates us from that because we either don't feel good enough to reach out to that person and say, hey, I'm struggling with this and I see you're doing really well with this. Can we talk about like that? Or is that real? Like,
Yeah. Do you really not
are
struggle
you really
with this?
okay in this area or not? That takes so much vulnerability and so much risk that I think progressively in this season of our life and the development of this country and technology, it's pulled more and more and more away from authentic relationship. So we can get fed in a way through just distant stuff. And
Well, you can see why people like Brene Brown, who's
Yes,
a hit
yes,
author
yes.
and a Netflix special, and she is really pouring into vulnerability, and
Yep.
you can see why, because people feel like that doesn't exist anymore.
And here's the thing. She has a huge following. I love her work.
Yeah.
People crave it.
Yeah.
Like, they still crave it, even though they might hide behind a phone or not feel good enough because they're stuck in comparison. Like,
And that says something.
you actually crave vulnerability and connection. And, she doesn't necessarily base it scripturally, but God made us relational. Like, it is so normal to need.
Yes.
and to need connection and just to need in general.
And it's so interesting that comparison blocks that relational
Yes.
connection. I mean, 1,000 ways to Sunday. I mean, I find myself drawn to people like me
Yep.
who struggle with the same stuff, but anybody I perceive doesn't have my same junk. And it's the story, she uses a phrase that says, the story I tell myself.
Yes, exactly.
The story I tell myself is that she's never struggled with her weight. Their marriage is always great. Her kids are well behaved. They don't, like, so she's not my people. I say that all the time.
Yeah.
She's my person. He's my person. She's not, I can tell she's not my people.
Well, and so we create the story and we create the island story. Right?
Oh,
so you
yes.
create the story that you think is the top of the island, but you don't know what's below their waterline. You don't know their whole story. Right? So and we all naturally do that. Sometimes I catch myself doing it, sometimes I don't. But it's saying, hold on. I actually don't know if that's true. I need to be curious. I think we miss out so much when we stop being curious.
Can you imagine like what a cup of coffee with somebody would solve? If I were to take that person who I would say, I can tell she's not my person because like on the
XYZ,
surface,
right.
If I sat down with coffee, and we said, here's my junk, what's your junk?
Exactly. But that question is very risky. It's risky for the person asking, and it's risky for the person receiving it because you're inviting someone to be real and authentic. And that same curiosity, like, with couples work, I don't give worksheets. That's just not my style. I want to get to let me get to the bottom of the wound and heal that rather than stick a Band-Aid on. Not that worksheets are Band-Aids, because they're not. But I say, before you react, can you ask, hey, what's going on, or what happened over there? Like, be curious before you assume.
Oh, I assume all kinds of crazy things.
Right.
My
so
poor husband.
I assume that look or that comment meant this. Now, I could be right. Or I could be completely wrong. And we just got in an argument over something that neither one of us...
Because of the story I was telling myself.
Right. And it's the same thing with people we compare. I mean, I'm not going to be able to sit down with, like, Brene Brown, although she is very vulnerable and okay, I want to know more of what's below your waterline. But I can with people I work with, good friends. Like, I can go and say, hey, this is kind of what it sounded like when you said this, or I'm assuming this. I could be off. Can you help me understand conflict stuff, or just in general? Like, let me know your heart. And that gives access to real life, right? But also then I can say, okay, I know how to come alongside of you now. Or now you know how to come alongside of me, and I've invited you in to my struggle. So we kind of break this barrier that comparison puts up there when we're just curious, and we, seek the Lord for contentment where we are, and we have like our tribe or our people around us that can call things out when we are blind to it.
And that's what I love about relationships is that they're actually like mirrors.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that's why a lot of times we keep people at distance, or at least I have in the past, is because being close to you means that what's reflected back is going to be some stuff that I'm going to have to deal with.
Oh, yeah.
I'm the oldest of 3 girls, and so I'm very lucky to have sisters, and my relationships with them are spectacular. But it is, they're the ones who are going to say, you said that, and I'm going to call you out on it. Or that the way you handled that right there was not, I don't think you meant to handle it like that. And that's hard, but they've also had a whole lifetime with me to be able to do it.
Exactly.
Which is wonderful.
And that, if our life ultimately is about growing in the Lord and becoming more like Him, right? We should invite people like that in. Not the person that's going to shame you.
They have to be safe.
Yep. Or beat you up about it, or, look down their nose at you, but say, I get that. Because the reality is, everyone has felt shame before. Everyone has felt anxiety. Everyone has screwed up before. Right?
Yeah.
Everyone compares. So content-wise, it may be different, but we are all actually connected from an emotional standpoint because we've all had those same feelings. So I can say, I am so sorry that happened and you feel this way. And I may have no idea what that experience actually was like because I've never experienced it.
Yeah. But you can
But
still
I know
empathize.
that feeling.
Yeah.
I have felt sadness before. I have felt shame before. I have felt devastation before. And I have felt incredible joy. So you can enter with people into that space because we've all experienced those emotions.
Well, and that's what I love. Jason's third step to get out of it. You know, one of the things he talks about is keeping your eyes on your own paper, where we can talk about, because I want to talk to you about fruit of the Spirit. But the third step he talked about, and he said the hardest is to publicly celebrate other people.
Absolutely.
And I think it's really hard for women. I think it's probably even harder for men to celebrate your coworker who got the promotion. But that there is that if we can connect to that same feeling of joy, there's something to be said about getting out of that trap of contentment if you can publicly celebrate somebody.
Absolutely. And what you're celebrating isn't just that thing. It's, man, they're growing into God's story. Right? Like they are living
so it's not
into
just
their
the promotion.
Story. Right. Like the Lord opened that door and they walked through it. That's amazing. Like they had faith to say yes.
I love that that's even, I've never really thought about it this way, but you know, we put other things on as idols over God that we're striving to, but we can even put the celebration as an idol. If we say we're celebrating the promotion, not that God opened that door, this unique story God has.
Yeah. And it's kind of like
so it's honoring God even in that.
Yeah, because ultimately, like, God has a story for all of us. So, and he knows what we're going to choose or not choose, or what's going to happen or not. So it's ultimately saying, I'm going to celebrate with you that you are continuing to be faithful with whatever the Lord's writing in you. And that is helping them remain content with where they are, and it's reminding me to be content. Now, do I do that well? No. I mean, therapist or no therapist, I'm human, and I might know, like, the right thing to do, but, you know, I still have a life. I still have struggles.
Yeah.
So, and sometimes, like, as funny as it is, my husband's not a therapist. He so could be, though. Like, he'll say, do you remember that thing you were learning from that book?
Oh.
Or that you were telling me about? And I don't know that he's ever said it that clearly, but he's helped remind me, like, you walk with people and you equip them, like, turn it on yourself.
Yeah, there's the relationship as a mirror.
Yes.
He is. Sam is totally reflecting that back on you in the best way.
In the best way. But I also have to put my pride down to receive it.
Yes. Oh,
you know,
pride.
And I think that's where, if we want to, whatever the struggle is, you know, all the ones that we've talked about in the series have been awesome, but it all takes the same. Like, if we're going to invite someone into our story, we have to let them speak, and we have to put our pride aside.
Well, it's interesting talking about, like, how we see progress in these areas. Putting our pride aside. You know, the things that are worth measuring don't have metrics.
Right.
Jason even said one of the big steps is to keep your eyes on your own paper.
Yes.
And to only measure what matters. And that made me think of the things like the fruits of the Spirit. You know, self-control, gentleness, patience. How do we measure if we are growing in the fruit of the Spirit?
Well, I think it's not just I think it's just growth in general. Like, thinking about it in like, if we're moving towards the mountaintop, which is you know, I'm with Jesus, therefore I'm perfect, right? It's not, the idea is not an escalator up, which an escalator is straight, right? There's no dips in it. It's rolling hills towards the top. So that means I'm going to work on self-control with my tongue, or with my food, or with my work hours, because I can be a workaholic or whatnot. And I'm just going to say, okay, over this next year, can I reduce it overall by X? And the rolling hill is, I did really well, and then I, like, totally bombed a month, and then I got right back on the train. So it's allowing for mistakes, it's allowing for grace, but it's also allowing for accountability to get you back on. So that's we're on the way down the hill, but nope, we're right back up. And you're generally still moving up, but it's
just not so linear.
It's not linear, and I think if we expect it to be linear, it's that kind of 10-yard line.
Yeah.
Right? It's
a moving target you can never achieve.
Yeah, it's I will work 15 hours a day, or I will exercise 5 hours a day because I need to get to that 2 or to that executive level. Right? Or I'm going to make my kid do 5 hours of tutoring every day because I need them to get into this school and be in this profession.
Wow.
So it's...
But I love that I love that image of an escalator on rolling hills, because I think when he was talking about keeping your eyes on your own paper, even setting goals that are like, how was I doing this time last year? And it's not like, well, how was Maria seems to have gotten her time under control. Why haven't I why am I still struggling this a year later? It's like, okay, I'm doing a little bit better compared to last year.
You have to have the mindset of the Lord is growing me, and in some seasons it may actually work well. Like balancing being a working mom is like a puzzle piece that never is put together, and it's frustrating. And there are weeks where I'm like, oh my gosh, this went well. How do I redo this? I don't know how to redo this.
We ate vegetables every day this week.
Yeah, that does not happen. But it's giving myself the grace to say, okay, I need to pull what worked, and let's see how I can re-enter that in, and progressively, hey, I'm actually doing a little bit better. I don't have as much guilt not putting my son to sleep twice a week. Right? Like I get that I'm contributing to God's kingdom in a different way, and he knows I love him deeply and I'm attached to him in a healthy way. Like,
there's no doubt there.
right.
Yeah.
But comparison can come in and say, yeah, but this mom works and puts her son down every night, or she still does all these crafts with him or her. I don't know when they have time to do that, but
Lord, Pinterest in and of itself.
I don't do Pinterest anymore. But it's really saying, okay, God, what story are you writing for me and my family, or my job, or my group of friends, and as I relate to them, and where are you calling me to grow?
Well, what would you say to the person who always feels like the grass has got to be greener on the other side?
Short answer, it's not. Long answer is let's rest, reflect, and look at the green grass on your side, even if it's a patch.
Wow.
And let's see if we can expand our idea of it or our vision of it, or pray that the Lord grows it. Like, let's do that first before I work my butt off because I need to be in this other role. Or
I love that rest and reflect, because I don't think we think about that so much when we're where we are. It's always what's the next thing. I mean, I'm guilty of that, saying,
oh, yeah,
gosh, when my kids get to be this age, or when we, I think I have a little bit of the lake house bug like my dad does.
Yeah.
It must be like downloaded DNA issues, where I'm like, gosh, if we could ever get a lake house, or if we could ever, but there is something about resting and reflecting that, it's something about gratitude that's deeply connected to contentment.
Well, we allow space for the Lord to speak. And I am horrible. I am like a productivity person. If anyone knows about the Myers-Briggs, like the J and the P, like when we did our premarital counseling, I can't be any more J. Like I was at the end of the J spectrum. And
you had a list for all the ways you were J?
Yes, exactly. And I function that way, and I struggle with perfection, and I struggle with achievement, and I struggle with approval. And the times in my life where I have felt most content is I have had regular space with the Lord to just help me see, like, these are not bad gifts, right? Like I love to lead, I love to create, I love to grow, but it's all about me and what I want, rather than, Lord, how do I use these gifts for you in my world? And can I be content with how you're using them right now?
So what's a good first step for somebody who's listening to this podcast right now? They've gotten to where they're driving, they're done, they're gonna take the earbuds out, they're gonna be done, and they're gonna say, okay, right now, I'm gonna take a first step. What's that first step?
I would say a couple things. Carve some time out and pray, and let's ask the Lord to reveal where you're struggling with comparison, what you're putting before him. And then I always tell folks, put stuff on paper. And the reason I say that, it's really hard to battle in your mind because there's so many competing thoughts. Write them all down and say what's truth and what's lie, because then you have something on paper to interact with.
I love a good chart.
Right.
I love a good list.
But
I might be a little
if you draw two islands and you put a water line, and you write all of you, like you write the great gifts God's given you, and you write your struggles, and then think, who do I look to, and who do I compare to, or what thing am I envying, and write that at the top of the water line, at the other island, right above the water line, and say, okay, Lord, like, what do I do with this?
What a fun, and this is going to sound sick, but what a fun homework assignment.
I
mean, seriously,
I'm
to have
visual,
two
so I have to
islands.
see stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm gonna leave here and do that. Like, what's my island? What do I let people see above the waterline? What's beneath it? And then what do I envy from other people that's above their waterline?
And
Wow.
I think, to think through, who have you put in my life that's trustworthy enough to invite into my stuff below the waterline, to help me release things, to help me realize it's normal, to help break the this ideal other person or self, striving. Like, we need people's voices, because sometimes the Lord speaks through Scripture, through prayer, but He also speaks through His body. And so it's really a team. Like, we just need a team around us all the time.
Yeah.
And I think with comparison with social media, we can isolate so easily, and shame can take over. I mean, shame has a lot, to do with comparison. And it grows in silence. I think Brene Brown puts it in some way, like it's in a petri dish and it grows.
Gosh, growing in silence. That is fascinating.
So, yeah.
That is good. Okay, y'all. Everybody grab your sheets of paper and your markers. We're drawing islands. We're drawing islands after this. Well, in closing, would you pray for us? Would you pray for my listeners, those? Because I think what I have heard out of this podcast, which has been so cool, is that we get started in this conversation on Sunday or Saturday.
Yeah.
And we start to marinate it. And then a few days later, we're diving into this podcast and people are saying, wow, like God took me one step further.
Yes.
I'm processing now. Instead of just hearing something on Sundays, I'm processing it for like 4 or 5 days, and the Lord is doing a work. So I'm excited for the people who are hearing this and they're feeling like, okay, God, I'm sensing that you're leading me somewhere. Would you pray for our friends? Thanks.
Lord, we just thank you that you are a good Father, and that you write beautiful stories, and sometimes we get it and sometimes we don't, Lord, but that doesn't change who you are in our lives, and who you've created us to be, Lord. I pray for anyone listening or watching, Lord, that this is a struggle for them, one, that they would know that they are created in your image, and that is such a unique and amazing, amazing, amazing thing. So, Father, show up in their lives in a way that would be so bold and loud that they can't run away from it, Father. And two, I just pray for courage. I pray for courage to pick up a paper, to ask a friend, to talk to a spouse, Lord, about this struggle of comparison. And Lord, I also pray for courage to talk to you about it. Sometimes we leave you out because we feel shame about not being content, or shame about not feeling perfect for you. So I pray, Lord, that there would be courage to invite in, Father. And I also pray, Lord, that you would speak loudly through the people, through your Scripture, through quiet time with you, to lead them out of this room and into freedom. And Father, I pray also for courage for folks that may need to call a counselor and walk through it professionally. We all struggle. We all go to counseling. There's no one that is above or below in need of this. So I just thank you. I thank you for those listening, because they're choosing to go deeper. And Lord, I just pray that you would walk with them in their story and in their journey. In your name we pray. Amen.
Thanks so much.
You're welcome.
Thanks so much for joining us this week. If you think that this podcast is something that somebody in your life would benefit from, we would love for you to share it. I think that's a great way to get the conversation started. Feel free to share it. You can find us on YouTube or in the Forest Hill Church podcast under Weekend Messages. We are so glad you joined us. Join us next week. I'll actually be on vacation doing a little rest and relaxation and reflection. But Lindsay Knuckles, who joined me a couple weeks ago when we talked about Ruth, she's going to be here with Scott Carpenter, one of our counselors, to talk about deep wounds and disappointment. How do we escape the trap of deep wounds and disappointment? That is going to be meaty, you guys. That is going to be so good. So I hope you have a great week, and we'll see you soon.